Hey there folks, my name is Michael and I'm a visual development artist working in the entertainment industry. This will be my first process walkthrough. Just a quick disclaimer before we get much further into the process. I do flip my canvas a lot, and I know it can be a bother, especially when it is sped up so fast. So please, be careful if it's the type of thing that doesn't go well with you. I work this way because it's much more easier on my hands to do a certain type of movement in a certain direction rather than forcing them to move in a way that they're not really comfortable in doing. Since I end up drawing a lot, I do take care of my wrist and what my body tells me. Also, please note that I have a second monitor where I put all my references. That way, I know that what I'm drawing is accurate. And so let's get going. The first step when I start a picture like that is getting the idea, and then doing a good amount of research on the subject that I'm going to be depicting. In this case, we're talking about a barn that is set in the 1920s and the 1930s, during the Prohibition era. So I had to make sure that all the items that are present in the scene were from that time period. In order to do so, I've watched some movies like Live by Night, Boardwalk Empire, Lawless, and the list goes on. I also looked into the Mafia Definitive Edition video game for the many environments and props they recreated. Finally, I did some Google search and looked at Pinterest to see what an old barn would look like and what item would populate a garage of this era. Once this was established, I then started doing some small sketches to see what kind of camera angle I'd like to use and what kind of storytelling I'm going to depict. I made a couple of them, exploring different shapes, different settings, different ambience, and so I settled with two that I really liked and then moved into a quick 3D sketch. Now 3D sketching really helps me when I need to speed up my workflow. As this was an assignment I was doing for an online class, I only had a couple of days to do an illustration like that, so I didn't want to fuss with the metrics and mess with the size of the room too much. Doing a quick sketch in 3D would help me move the objects around and resize the room in a faster way rather than just trying again and again until I'd be satisfied with a traditional 2D perspective drawing. I just recently started learning Blender, so I'm not so good in it for now. And so, I made a really basic scene and imported some old 3D models that I had in Modo prior to my software jump. Once this was done, I moved into refining my sketch a bit. Now that I had a good understanding of the camera angle that I wanted, it was time for me to light the scene a bit, to see how the viewer would react to the scene and how well it would look with all its contextual elements. Now moving on, since it was really a rough pass with only basic 3D modeling, I went in and did a second sketch pass. This second pass enables me to see how I'm going to guide the eye in the scene and also if there's anything that doesn't need to be there that is just in the way of me telling the story or showing the environment to the viewer. I'm really not focusing on the details or the specific elements. Most of what I'm going to be doing are boxes and cylinders. I'm going to hint at a couple of small elements, but it's really just for me to understand where I'll be going after that. At the end of this process, I went in and highlighted the areas that are going to be simple, medium, and complex. If anything doesn't work, or if their relationship is improper, I then move the objects and sketch again until I get a reading that is suited for the image I'm trying to depict. Now, I don't always do this, but I went in and did a second sketch phase for this drawing. Since it had to incorporate a lot of smaller elements, different props, I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly where I was going. There's nothing worse than finding out problems later in the process and trying to fix them. You'd better fix them early on rather than once everything is kind of already set. It saves you a ton of time and some hurdles. Then, I basically just go ahead and refine everything that I see in the scene so that once I get into my final line art, everything is smooth sailing and I can just simply relax and enjoy my time. Here, if I see something that disrupts or doesn't have the reading that I want in the scene, again, I fix it, because once I'm happy with this quick second sketch, I tone down the opacity of the layer and move into the final line art. Although this is an important stage, I don't think there is much to be discussed here, because it's simply about refining what's already there, and that is just fun for me. You just focus on your line thickness and the elements you are depicting. Well, there's actually a ton to be discussed on how you draw a line, how you make it read well in composition, but I'll leave that for another tutorial. This here is simply an appetizer for you to see how I work. I have to admit that while I do this, I sometimes get really lazy, and what I do is just I draw one object and I copy paste it several times and just tweak a couple of things here and there to make it different. Believe me, nobody's going to notice that if it's a copy paste, but it will save you time and effort while still doing the work that you needed to be doing. Whenever there is a line or an element that I don't feel at ease doing on the same layer as the rest of the background, I just add another layer to draw on it. That way, if I need to transform, to modify or rotate it, it doesn't impact the rest of the work that I've already done. Once I'm happy with the result, I then merge a layer and keep going. Sometimes when I know a particular element is going to be reproduced a number of times, I will make a shape and define it into a brush. That way, I can spawn multiple instances of this element and it really helps my work. For example, you can see how I've handled the chains hanging from the ceiling. Once I'm happy with the overall line art, I then go back and fix some of the lines that need to be thicker and really pay attention to which lines come forward and which one needs to recede. This will help the reading of the piece. I might add a couple more detail here and there, but overall I think we're pretty done here for the line art. Now the last part there is to this drawing is to add the signage and to do a quick value pass so that it's easier to read, because right now there's just way too much line to really read the image properly. So after researching which kind of font and typography I'd like to see in my work, I add another layer and start working on the value pass. Now for this part of the work, many elements have to be separated in order for me to easily create the light transition that I wish. And so I'm going to make a new layer for each element that is going to be in front or behind another. Once this is done, I review and refine the values of these layers so that you can read the depth. Then, it's only going to be a matter of adding lights and playing with the contrast. Since lighting in this scene is rather soft, I use an airbrush to do this job. When I need to add lighting on an object, I will usually light most of the part that I want to see lit, and then I'll erase where I went too far. This enables me to create smooth transitions between the surface and the light. When I get closer to the end, I create a layer above all the other ones and I add the highlights there. That way, it covers the line art and it really helps show the shape of the objects. Lastly, I might tone down some of the dark lines within the line art to create even more depth in the scene. And voila! I hope you enjoyed this process and that you've learned a thing or two. Thanks for your time and have a nice day.